Hey everybody, welcome back to the Comic Card Live channel. We had a few days off, but it's good to be back in the saddle. We've got a fun interview tonight with my friend Zaddick, who was at OAX and was an exhibitor, and I've known for a long time, but we've never had the chance to really get to know one another. So tonight, not only will I get to know him but a little bit better, but so will you. So let me bring Zaddick in here and get this thing started. Hey Zaddick.
How you doing, Bill? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I never put anything in that little sub thing. I'm gonna
Okay.
have to. Yeah, I don't know why. I always see it and I'm just like I skip it over. So
Right.
cool. It's good to have you at the show. Yeah, so you have a graphics banner in
I
the
do.
background.
Well, you notice that?
Yeah, I couldn't miss it. It makes my OAX banner look really small.
Yeah. Just gotta move it up. That's all. Yeah.
So so we were talking, you said you had a good show at OEX. Why don't we just start there and get the whole OEX side of things out of the way? You've exhibited twice in
Yep.
Collector Alley, and what's your experience like in that area with all those collector ruffians hanging out?
It's great. It's everything mingles so quickly, with the dealers and the collectors, and everybody's coming over and checking everything out. So it's a lot of fun. Seeing some people who I've only met online and dealt with online. So it's
Hmm.
nice to see them in person. Um, Meeting all the artists and having the artists as well coming over and checking out stuff. So it's a great, big enough show, but not too big that everybody gets to have a chance to see everybody for the most part. If you get a chance
Awesome.
to get away from your booth and all that,
Well, like
it's
I
good.
told you, I haven't looked at a back wall or turned a portfolio. So what kind of stuff do you bring with you when you go to OEX? I mean, I'm just kind of curious, exhibit wise, and is it all your art? How do you curate what you bring to the show?
It's a mix. I try to bring some illustration stuff
Mhm.
that people would be familiar with to a certain degree. Like a Joseph Clement Cole or Heinrich Klei or Franklin Booth. People know to a certain degree. Usually for that kind of stuff, even some Dean Cornwell, some preliminaries. Usually the only people that recognize that stuff or know what it is maybe the artists, but that's okay. They enjoy seeing it, and sometimes they purchase something as well. So it's a mix of things that belong to me, things that are on consignment,
Mhm.
a little bit of everything.
Awesome. Rick Welch is commenting on the size of your Corbin behind you.
It is, yes.
What
That's
is
why I put
the
it up there
actual
'cause it's a
dimension?
little different.
What's that?
That's why I put it up here because, size-wise, and the golden is a pretty large piece as well. People always expect
Yeah,
cover
I'm
comic book cover
I'm
size.
jealous of both of those pieces, as you might imagine. I mean, come on, the Golden is from the X-Men Companion. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure it's probably been printed in many other areas, but I mean, that was one of the. I mean, I knew Golden's work, but just I was blown away when I saw the cover to the X-Men Companion. Right, it was just I hadn't seen anything of that magnitude before,
right.
and you haven't had and the artists have been drawing Rex Sentinels ever since.
Yeah.
Beneath
No,
the
it's
feet of
it's
an
it's an
X-Men.
exciting piece to have a chance to own, and, Golden was, one of the first comic book I bought, was Micronauts #1 off the stands. So, I was familiar with his work, and when I had a chance to get this, I was very took advantage of it, but,
I
it's
don't blame
exciting.
you. Yeah, well, we're gonna be looking at a bit of comic art and illustration art, but
Yeah.
every piece you get, that you have, at least showing in your calf gallery, are all like exemplary examples for those artists, especially on the comic art side. But on the illustration side, it's the rarity, of some of those
Yeah.
artists that you don't get to see too often.
Right, right. Yep. I've always been kind of a small mass collector. I try and
Mhm.
get one example. I instead of getting two or three examples, I've just tried to get one that would really be exciting to own and surprises me when I look at something. I'm like, oh, I don't believe I own this. This is great. So that's why I like one strong example, and that's the way I collect. So it's a small collection, but one strong example of people I enjoy when I can, when I can afford it.
That's not a bad way to do it, right? I mean, so many of us, myself included, goes after the smalls, right? And it's
Yeah.
a
So
good example, right?
yeah.
But yeah, you tend to have one that is going to make you proud, I guess, when you
Yeah.
know you have it in your collection because it is a stellar example. I mean, and just the two pieces behind you again are exemplary of that.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah.
but Well, why don't we talk a little, I think we first met probably at New York Comic Con. I mean, obviously, I think we met through CAF before that.
Sure.
But tell me a bit about yourself. I mean, your background in art collecting and the arts, and how you got started in the hobby.
Well, I've been collecting artwork since maybe 1980s, 80s, 86, 89, something like that.
Hmm.
So I started pretty early, I guess. Very early on, I decided that I wasn't going to spend the money on comic books. It's getting to be expensive. I was like, I would pick up an X-Men 1 because I was seeing Stan Lee and get him to sign it or something. And it was getting to a point where I was like, well, for this amount of money, I could get a piece of artwork where it's unique, it's one of a kind. And when you see it in person, you're looking at a comic with the coloring kind of muddy sometimes. When you see the artwork, it's impressive how much work goes into it that's lost in publication. So I decided very early on to stop buying comic books and just put my money towards artwork. So yeah, I've been collecting since late 80s, just a piece every now and then. What I could afford, I'd usually save up for a while, save up for 6 months, sometimes a year, and then get a piece and then start all over again. Um, I was always very aware of the illustration stuff from my father's a collector of illustrated books and everything.
Okay.
So I was aware of a lot of those illustrators, and it was such a crossover. You look at Wrightson, and you look at Franklin Booth, and you look at Harry Clark, and you look at all these illustrators. So many of them cross over and are influenced by each other, but it's not so known in the comic world. So I was always kind of interested in illustration as well. I would go down to Illustration House in my 20s, and every now and then pick up something as well. As the same thing, going to Sotheby's auction and picking up something comic related when I could. So then I had a chance to work at Illustration House for a while. I worked there for a good 10, 15 years, curating shows and auctions, and just getting more immersed in the illustration world and those artists and everything. So just kind of continue from there, just with what I collect, the shows I do. Yeah.
So what about with the comic art side of things in the late 80s and early 90s when you were picking up pieces, were you buying them at shows in New York, or and what were some of the
Yeah,
early dealers or art sellers or artists that you were picking up pieces from?
sure. Yeah, I mean, I remember what in Comic Buyer's Guide, seeing Albert's ad for
Hmm.
his catalog as his first catalog. So I don't know if it was something you send in a couple of bucks or you get the catalog, and I purchased things from him from that catalog. Just meeting him down in Lower Manhattan when he was working, picking up pieces. Yeah, going to comic conventions. There was one dealer I remember. AOK was a dealer. They used to have a box of the $5 box. It was all the Buscema Conan pages and stuff like that. It's kind of the low end stuff. So you think about how things have changed since then. But yeah, I was buying things at shows from the artists, and like I said, I would save up money and see an artist at a show and try and get something from him, and just going about it like that.
Interesting. So, uh, did we were talking? I had a guy on recently. And so, did Albert ever like cold call you and ask you what you owned, or did he just happily just sell you artwork?
Asking what I owned.
Yeah.
Well, everybody's pretty aware of
Yeah.
what's owned, and there have been times that our collecting paths have crossed over between Albert and I, and
Hmm.
there's things that I own that he missed out on, and the golden being one of them. He thought, back in the day, it was. I mean, I'm sure we'll see it later on and talk about it more, but it was 1,500, and which was a lot of money for me back then when I was maybe 22, something like that. So it was a lot for me, but it was overpriced, and I was like, that's overpriced. I'm not going for that, and hold off on it. But there have been times that our collecting interests have crossed over, but yeah, everybody kind of knows a lot about what others own, and over time where things are.
Right. Oh, of course. I mean, anybody who's been in the hobby as long as you have, for over 30 years, you kind of get to know where a lot of the good pieces are. And
Yeah,
Albert is one of those art dealers and collectors who kind of crosses over into the same areas you do. He does
sure.
dabble in illustration, art collecting, and
He
sales,
does.
and I'd say, he's one of the few, right? You don't see, Mike or Anthony or a few others do that, but he has an appreciation for it. So I could see you guys, running into one another at certain auctions and stuff. But that is
Yeah,
part of the fun of it. But learning
exactly.
who's got what, and because at the end of the day, you never know what you may need that they have.
Right.
But $1,500, well, we'll talk more about that piece later.
Yeah.
That was that was pretty incredible. But I think so. Tell me a little bit about the Illustration House and your relationship with them. I mean, I knew you had worked with them for a while. When did
Yeah.
you start working there?
There was another person working there, Fred Taraba, who was a very knowledgeable member of the staff, and he decided he was separating from Illustration House, moving out to Wyoming, starting his own business. Taraba Illustrated Art or something like that is his website. He still does it now. And at that point, Walt and Roger Reed were kind of the first people to start dealing American illustration original artwork. Walt was an artist himself, worked for the famous artist school. The kind of things you see on the back of the comics when you saw Albert Dorn, learn to draw kind of things. So Walt was friends with most of those artists and started representing a lot of them and a lot of their works, Rockwell's and stuff like that, because he was friends with Rockwell. He started representing those, and his son Roger Reed were both some of the most knowledgeable people in American illustration. And like I said, they wrote the book. They illustrated Illustration America and stuff like that. They wrote the books on history of illustration. So yeah, when Fred left, I started working there and did a few comic related shows, which was different for them, but not too far different.
Mhm.
A lot of those artists they dealt with every now and then. Some of the strip stuff, Winsor McKay and George Herman and stuff like that. So they dealt with that stuff to a degree. And I just kind of broadened it a little more, doing comic related shows. Did the Frank Thorne retrospective with them there. And yeah, but just Walt and Roger were some of the most knowledgeable people in American illustration. So it was great working with them for that time.
Yeah, I feel like I went to an after, like a get together there one day after a New York Comic Con show.
Yeah.
It wasn't the one you sent me the photos to, though. It was
Okay.
it was a different one. It might have been right before that. I remember walking into the space, and there was I mean, a large horizontal piece to the left. I mean, that reminded me of like a Hildebrandt, but I don't think it was a Hildebrandt. It was probably
Okay.
something older. But
Right.
but yeah, that was probably the one and only time I got over to the Illustration House too. Unfortunately, I always have wanted to go back there. I see photos from so many events there, and I think that was the one and only time I got to attend it. But that
Yeah.
one exhibit that you sent me the link to, which I should dig up and share in the chat too, had a lot of familiar faces in it, right? It had like Bob McCann in there, Dino
Yep.
was there.
Right.
Gosh, I'm trying to remember who else I saw, but and that was 15 plus years ago, I think.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, exactly. But yeah, so you've been bringing people together for quite a while. I mean, that's kind of what I was trying to get at. Just having meetups and getting comic art collectors involved in the Illustration Society, as well as just getting them into an illustration house and getting them into different facets of the hobby and artwork that they can collect. Just to you got to expose people at some point, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Trick them into it. Yeah, when I do
Jason's
shows, sometimes I try to do a mix of it, so they have to look at some of the illustration to get to the comic stuff. But yeah,
right, exactly. Uh, Jason's, he's a big X-Men fan, and yeah, he can't cut. He's complimenting you. He's buttering you up, letting you know that you own a couple of his favorite X-Men pieces on the planet. I think
yep.
is
I
what
got to
he's
be
trying to get
careful when I walk down the street when he's around. Yep.
at. uh, but yeah, no, there's that's why I put the link in the chat for your calf gallery, so people could kind of tool around in it a little bit. But I mean, in that time, I mean, who are some of the most interesting artists that you got to meet there? Because I mean, a lot of times, the creators are going to be a part of those exhibits, and I would
Sure.
imagine whether you were working there before or after, I mean, you've had to have kind of run into some people who you're just in awe to actually be able to hang out with.
Yeah. Yeah, they're probably more illustrated related, but yeah, Peter Sev would come by, we'd talk
Hmm.
to him, and he's a collector of Heinrich Klei as well. But yeah, it's hard to think of people right now, but it was just Gregor Manchez is another one. But yeah, the people just come in and big collectors, Korshak, that's why first met Stephen Korshak,
Hmm.
coming there, who's got a incredible collection of sci-fi stuff, who most people have seen down there at OAX. But yeah, a lot of collectors, a lot of dealers came through to meet.
Yeah, no, they've hosted a lot of important shows over the years, to give recognition to, whether it's a comics creator or an illustrator. Um, Manches, of course, is one of my favorite painters
Yeah,
of all time. And
good.
I've only gotten to see a few of his originals in person, but yeah, he's just, he's one of those guys that, I've loved pretty much everything he's done in his career. I mean, I can't
Yeah,
think of an era, or, even though his styles changed a little bit over time, it's just one of those people that who I always admire. And I think he's influenced so many creators today that are in the illustration field. I mean, I was
sure.
looking at a painting by Donato today, online, and
Right,
it was
right.
just reminding me of some of Greg's work, and even reminiscent of like one of the pieces in that we're going to look at of your stuff today. It's clear that and Donato's a good example. He was a fan of George Perez, for instance. There's a lot of crossover. They, whether or
Definitely.
not they work in those fields,
Yep,
a lot of those illustrators are familiar with comic artists and vice versa. So there's
definitely.
yeah, I mean, they're influenced one way or another by seeing their work.
Yeah, yeah. Mignola is another one who comes to mind, who's a big collector of American illustration, would be a buyer at illustration house and come by, bid on auctions and pick up things from us occasionally.
Hmm.
And whose collections is very into the illustration. So he's definitely influenced by those kinds of works.
Yeah, well, that shows in his work without question.
Yeah.
uh there you go. Rick Welch wants to know if you ever met Joe Kubert.
I didn't. I dealt with him through the mail, but I never got a chance to meet him in person. He was very good friends with Frank Thorne, though. They were very fond of each other, and they were very influential to each other. But I heard he was a really great guy, but never got a chance to meet him in person.
Well, I was just gonna almost ask the same question Brian Peck did. How did you meet Thorne and later, repped him, worked with him? I know that you did work with him on art sales, and uh, maybe, to some degree still are involved with the Thorne estate. But tell me a bit about Frank, because he's an artist whose work I've always admired. I only own a few pieces by him, nothing impressive, but yeah, I mean, he was a character. I mean, he was everywhere in the early 70s in New
Sure.
York, the comic scene.
Yeah, and he really started his own graphic novels, and just very
Hmm.
groundbreaking what he did. Um, Frank was one of the nicest people I ever met in comic art. You hear about some nice people, and there's a lot of really great, friendly, honest people in it. But Frank was definitely one of those. Um, Frank, I was always communicating with him in the past, and he had actually called Illustration House. He had a Line Decker painting, a Saturday Evening Post cover that
Oh,
he
wow.
was decided he wanted to sell. He's like, yeah, I want to sell this painting. I was like, okay, yeah, no problem. I can find a buyer for you. Um, and if you ever want to do anything yourself, because I've always been talking to him over the years about picking something up from him and working with him. And he said, okay. And that was about it. He's like, come out to my place. I was like, okay. So yeah, I went out there. As much of a dirty old man as you might think he is by the way he worked, he was very, very nice, very family oriented. Had several kids, several grandkids, and everything. So we decided to do a retrospective of
Mhm.
his collection. He just kind of said, over there's the flat files. You can go through it and pick out what you want. And him and Joe Kubert decided very early on that they weren't going to sell their artwork unless they needed to. Otherwise, if we don't have a reason to sell it, we're not going to sell it. So him and Cubit both did that. They just held on to their stuff. So when I went to see Frank, he had about 2 flat files, just full of stuff, full of artwork, about 4 feet of artwork. And I went through, pulled out some pieces to be a retrospective, some older stuff, a couple of Red Sonja covers, a couple stories, a couple pages, a couple Sherlock Holmes things. He did a little bit mix of everything. So I pulled out about 50 pieces. And I said, okay, Frank, I pulled out like 50 pieces that are a bit of a retrospective of what you've done, time period and everything. If you want to look through and see what works for you, and maybe if there's anything you don't want to sell, that's fine. Just take a look through. And he's like, he just turned around, got me a cardboard box, and he said, put it in the box. I was like, okay, well, I'll make you a list and tell you what I've taken. He's like, okay. But he was really great to work with. The show was really a nice homage to him and all he's done. So it was nice to see all his works framed and hanging on the walls, and he really enjoyed that show quite a bit. And then from then on, I just handled the rest of the stuff that he had and got him very good prices. I think, some strong prices, even though it was a few years ago. He was very happy, and we just kind of continued that relationship till he passed away. I still work with his family a bit with whatever they might have left, but great guy, very, very nice guy, fun guy. His wife was his high school sweetheart. She'd go and she'd play keyboard at the church, the local church, and he's like, we would drive outside and he would wait outside for her, and he's like, they don't want to see me in there. So we'd sit outside and wait wait till she was done. But yeah, he was a great guy. A lot of fun working with him.
Well, that's great. I mean, I'm sure he didn't always dress as a wizard, but
Not always.
that's how a lot of people remember him.
Sure.
I remember there was that New York Comic Arts Gallery that was there in the late 70s or whatnot, and I saw some pictures from the Halloween parties from there, and there he was. He's unmistakable.
Sure. No, he was very early cosplay. Yep. He was yep. Him and all his Red Sonjas, the different people that play Red Sonja for him, including Wendy Pini. But yeah.
Yeah, no, what a pretty cool life. So was he in I had no idea where he lived. I didn't realize that
Jersey. He was just Rahway, New Jersey.
Oh wow, so he was very close.
He was born there, lived there his whole life. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's great. I mean, to be able to help a creator who you admire, and you've picked up a few pieces by him over the years too. But yeah, that's got to be gratifying. And clearly, he trusted you, and and that would be one of. There's been a lot of exhibits there, but that would have been one I would have loved to have gotten to see.
That was a great show. Brian did make it out there, but that was a great show. Yeah, a lot of fun to have a chance to host.
Exactly. What year was that?
I think 2007.
Okay.
I think something like that.
I'm gonna dig around and look for some old photos, see if there's anything out there. Did you guys produce a catalog for it?
No, everything was online. It's just getting to the time when it's just not worth it to invest the money and produce a catalog, which, people look at everything online now. So just not necessary to put that money out for the most part. But yeah.
Well, great. Brian's been a longtime fan of Thorne's work too. I know he worked with Dan Herman on some books, some reprint stuff over at Hermes Press, and I've picked up a few of those over the years. But have you ever worked with any other artists outside of Thorne in that way?
Not to that degree.
Yeah.
Not to that degree. No. Yeah. And it was really, very rarely do you have an opportunity to have that kind of depth of works of a single artist to work with. But but yeah, there's a unique situation, and yeah.
That's great. So as a collector who just kind of has choice examples of stuff, so you find it easy to kind of pass over some of the pieces that might not be like to the par of, I don't want to keep using the Michael Golden piece, but
Yeah.
is it easy for you? Because a lot of us, we just can't do that, and I'm kind of impressed by your ability, to kind of see a lot of great work. Because I mean, you can use when you were looking through the Thorne amount of work. I mean, I'm just thinking, you got 4 feet of art in front of you, but when you're looking at it, I imagine there's probably less than a dozen pieces in that stack of artwork that you feel like that would be what I'd want to have in my collection.
Yeah. Yeah. It's difficult. I mean, and there's a lot of great pieces that I passed by over the years because I wanted to get maybe a stronger example if I could. And, I have not been able to get it one. But yeah, it's sacrifices, and it's just I can find things wrong in pieces sometimes too easily. You might find something just drawn a little poorly, and they're like, well, look, what's wrong with that muscle in his back? And it just when you see those things, you can't unsee them. So yes, it's nothing's perfect. No piece of artwork is perfect. There's always things that may bother me or something that, same thing with an artist that bothers an artist sometimes too.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I've turned down a lot of great pieces. I've sold a lot of great things over the years to be able to get something bigger and better. But I don't look back with any regret. A lot of collectors do. A lot of people like, oh, I should never show sold out of something. I've sold things that I haven't been able to replace, but I'm fine once I make the decision to move on from that piece to get something bigger and better. I'm okay with it. And the things that I haven't been able to replace, it is what it is. you know,
Mhm.
yeah, I've sold some very good Ditko Spider-Man pages to try to get something better, and never had a chance to get something, and maybe might not anymore. But
Right.
it's the way it is. You make decisions and sacrifices, and just move forward.
Sean Glancy in the chat says he sold him some great Star Hunters
Yep,
pages and even a cover.
yep, yep. No, I'm aware of people who are certain interests in certain pieces. Yeah, so yeah, he picked up a piece from when they did a show at Society of Illustrators,
Hmm.
and I kept him in mind when I found some other pages and another cover to come back to him. Yeah. So I enjoy that too. I enjoy getting things for what they enjoy. Sometimes I'm a collector who pretends to be a dealer. Some people do it the other way around, but that's what I am. I try
The
to I
dealer
pretend
who
to be a
pretends to
dealer.
be a collector too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I would still, to me, it's like most dealers are collectors. That's why it's in to a certain degree, and that
yeah,
I think depending on how much of the collector DNA is still left in them is affects their ability to sell things at reasonable prices or not, and that's okay, right? We all value our collections. We'd all, I mean, if I look at a piece of my art from my collection, and I'm going to probably value it higher than it probably is retail, because we always do. I mean, there's
right.
that aspect to collecting that you always hope to. I mean, even when we were collecting sports cards or whatever it was that you collected when you were, 6 to 12, right? For me,
Right.
it was comic sports cards and. God, I can't remember what else. But point
Yeah.
is, I always thought I had the most valuable collection on the block, right?
Right.
It's tough.
No,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, whenever I think I have a decent collection, I'm reminded by some of the other people who are out there in the hobby, and you're like, yeah, never mind. You know, they uh they pull out one piece that's just can knock the socks off your whole collection. So there's always people out there with much bigger and much better collections than you. So that's why I've never gotten a big head about what I own or what I do, but because
Mhm.
there's always people out there who are bigger and better.
So have you done a lot of trading in your day, or is it mostly, selling and purchasing and versus trading? Because
Yeah,
I've never been good at it, but I know a lot of collectors, especially from who've been in the hobby as long as you have, are really good uh, doing either.
sure. I personally I don't like trading because I have a small collection. So whenever anybody wants to trade with me, they're like, "Oh, I want to trade for that golden." I was like, "Oh, that one I don't want to trade for." Even if they have something I really want, they want something else that is one of my favorite pieces or something. So I understand it's a trade. It's kind of an even up. Well, it's one per piece that I enjoy as much as this one, but I could never do that. So trading's never worked out for me. It's
Mm.
never something enjoy doing. If it's something I'm selling that I've already separated myself from, then I have no problem trading. But that's never the case. They always want something that's one of my personal pieces, and I don't
Right,
want to let
from the
go of it.
personal vault.
So I was like, no, I can't trade for that.
No, I get it too. I mean, I don't think even if it was something I wasn't super interested in, keeping like for the next 30 years, I don't know if I could do it. It's
Yeah,
just not in my
it's
blood.
tough.
I'm not good at I don't like to haggle, if
Right.
I don't like to if I don't like the price on something, I almost never ask, can I get it for less? I'd rather, try to find something else I can afford so I
Sure.
don't have to dicker around. So trading just doesn't work for me.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it works for some. I mean, especially
Definitely. Definitely
when you're
does.
dealing, yeah, dealers. I mean, when they're trying to freshen the inventory and move things around, I get that.
I
But as
think
a
because they
collector,
have more of a depth of a collection. They
mhm.
they have 50 Kirby's. So the guy could trade 3 or 4 of them off. It's not gonna affect me. But yeah, so that's why, since I have a small collection, since I only have one, I couldn't trade it off.
Right. I mean, you've had a few Ditkos, you said. So,
Yeah. Well,
those are hard to replace nowadays, but they were hard to replace back in the day. The Ditko pieces have always been like, the gold standard, right? Or
they
not
were.
even the gold
Yep.
standard. They were the things that were always the most valuable and always the most sought after. I mean,
Yep. And coveted.
even when you started collecting, I imagine.
Yes. Yep. Definitely.
Now, here's a question from Sean Clancy. He wanted to know if your brother still collects art.
No, not really. No,
Okay.
he collected for a little bit. He sometimes, when there was something I saw, I was like, oh, you should buy that. And that's primarily how he collected. I would see something, I was like, oh, you should get that. He's like, okay, I'd make him buy a little Rockwell sketch or a little Line Decker sketch when they would come to illustration house. I was like, oh, it's nice, it's small, it's affordable. You should buy it. And he's like, yeah, okay. And that was kind of about it. But no,
Mhm.
not too much. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but so he did live in the area though, so he got to go to some of your shows and see some of the work.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
that's art collecting is something you can share with the family. That's I've always said.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know there's a lot of collectors who kids don't care about it. You know, but
Yeah.
there's some that care. I know my son sometimes, when I'm selling something, I'll have it at a show, and he'll be like, you're selling that?" And I was like, "Well, I got this one instead." So those are the better piece. Like, "Oh, okay, okay, I can see that." So he's on the collection a little bit, making sure I don't
Because
get
your
rid of it.
son's been with you. That's how little I've gotten to see of parts of the show. But I know that we've always had a badge for your son, right? So he's
Yeah,
there. I haven't gotten to meet him. I don't think.
he came to the first show, but the last one he wasn't able to make it.
Oh, he
So
wasn't there this
yeah,
year. Okay.
yeah. The first one, my wife and both my sons came down, but the last show it wasn't working out, and I ended up coming down myself.
Okay.
So
Maybe I
yeah,
just remember him on the list early or something like that. But
that was the plan.
okay.
Yeah,
Well, you know what? Why don't we start looking at a few of the pieces of art here? I forget what number
yeah,
the golden is. I think it's somewhere in the middle. So everybody will have to wait to talk about that one. But let's see here. I've got to start with. Well, even before we do that, why don't we talk? We didn't talk a lot about. We didn't talk hardly at all. You've got the banner in the back,
yeah,
GraphFix Con. I know that used to be. That it's had a few different names over the years, and I think you even started it before the pandemic. And haven't.
yep,
Isn't that true?
yep.
I've
Yeah,
never gotten to go to one.
we started with it before the pandemic. Did maybe three shows maybe before the pandemic, and then
Mhm.
had to take a break for a few years, and then came back. And yeah, this year we're just rebranding as GraphFix Con. But yeah, it's that same, similar to your show. It's just all original artwork, in Manhattan. This year we're going to be May 4th. Easy to remember for any Star Wars fans out there. But
That's
yeah,
true.
it's I think got some Mark Schultz is coming to this one. James Warhola, who's a great artist, did a lot of Garbage Pail Kids cards and stuff like that. But yeah, just starting to work on the artists now, and we got about 50 tables of only original artwork.
Mhm.
So it just kind of the kind of show I want to go to and want to see. That's what I'm just kind of lazy. Don't want to go out to San Diego too much anymore.
Right.
trying to do a show that's local, that's gets everybody together that I would enjoy seeing. But like yourself, it's hard to get around. You know, before you know it, the show's over, and I didn't get a chance to see half the dealers or collectors who were there who I wanted to see what they had and what they brought with them. It's just it's time consuming, but it's a lot of fun to do, and I enjoy doing it and getting people out there and enjoying the hobby more.
Exactly. And Jeff Wedding says there's no Star Wars fans here, but he is
Oh,
probably
yeah.
the
Okay.
Star Wars fan in the in the chat. Uh, but yeah, is it? I assume it's in the same location as it was last year, or have you
Yep,
moved?
we're in Manhattan at the Hilton, Midtown Hilton. They have a lot of great convention space there. So they're really, really great about working with us, getting all the stuff we need, tables and chairs and everything. But yeah, it's a lot of fun doing, a lot of work, you know, like as you know, more than anybody, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun and just helping the hobby that I enjoy. You know, I enjoy it as a hobby, and that's why I do it. Yeah,
Well, here's the information. I put the link to your Instagram in the chat, so anybody who wants
that's
to
awesome.
follow you over there, because you don't actually have a website yet for the
Not yet.
show.
I have website purchased, but I'm working on it because I want it to also be a site to sell artwork and offer things. So
Ah,
still in the
cool.
works.
So if anybody wanted to reach out to you and talk to you, and email you, what's the best email
Definitely.
address?
Yeah. Email me through Comic Art Fans, through
That's
the Instagram. Yeah,
okay.
that'd be great.
I know the link to your calf is in the show description on Facebook and YouTube. So anybody wants to reach out to you can do that easily
Yeah,
through the calf.
definitely. I look forward to talk to anybody. Any questions? Always happy to talk.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about art now then. So we've clearly established that you have a diverse set of tastes here,
Yeah.
and we'll start off with, again, when it's painted, is it the painterly side of things? Is it the story side of things? What attracted you to picking up this particular piece?
Um, as much as I like sequential, I like to have one example that I can look at. Like I said, one example I can look at it and be like, that's awesome. I don't believe I own that. You know, that's great. So I remember when I first saw the French editions of the Watchmen, I thought the 6 covers they did were very, very unique, and personally I like them better than the Watchmen covers that were available in the US, but I understand the importance of them. But I like the painted versions and the characters. So when this came up and I had a chance to get it, I took advantage of it. This actually came up. Um, it came up on CAF actually. That
Oh, really?
Frederick was bringing it to San Diego, and it was a year that I wasn't going. And I had talked to him about it a little bit, and he wasn't sure about the price. I believe it's many years ago, but he brought it to San Diego. He sold it off, and I didn't have a chance at it. And then they all came up in auction, all but one cover. The owner decided to sell them all off because he couldn't get the last of the 6 covers, and he couldn't complete the collection. So he decided to sell them all off. So that I took advantage of that, and this was my favorite of what was available of the 5 that were available. So it was number 1 of the French edition. But yeah,
Yeah, no, they're fantastic images. I remember, but that's kind of part of the fun journey, right? I mean, a lot of times at a show like San Diego, you hear
yeah,
somebody shopping around a really impeccable piece, and whether they're doing it and they kind of are doing their own auction as they walk the floor for the 5 days. That's got to be a little bit agonizing. But I know of a few collectors who've picked up some pretty great pieces
yep.
by going through that kind of adventure. So it's tough when you're not able to actually be there to see it, but it still worked out in the end for you.
It did. It did pay a little more probably, but it worked out. Yeah. But yeah, so many great things come through conventions that never quite hit the floor. It's all kind of behind the scenes.
Right. Well, one of the things, I mean, it's kind of stupid, but I've been saying it of late is, really a lot of the great artwork really is in the collector's hands. And when they're the ones going out to the shows and they're bringing a few pieces that they may be willing to let go, I mean, that's kind of we see that at OAX, right? The dynamic of having collectors have artwork with them that you
Yeah.
don't know what it is, but they've got it in their portfolio. I mean, it's the truth, right? I mean, they're buying the good pieces from the dealers. It kind of gets harder and harder for the dealers to have great inventory, let alone new inventory, when there's so many collectors in the field that have just just great examples that aren't shown on CAF and maybe haven't been seen in person in 12 or 20 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's that's what makes shows like ours and yours special, just because of the opportunity to see what the collectors are bringing as well.
Yeah, and it's great to have that opportunity to see things in person. No matter how much you look at it on the computer or on the phone, when you see it in person, it's a big difference to for
Right.
dealers and collectors. It helps them a lot, I think.
What's the size of this piece?
That's probably like a 2-up. It's
Oh,
like a 2-up.
cool.
It's mixed media, acrylic on paper. Yeah.
Yeah, I linked it in the cap so everybody could see it, in the chat, because it really is pretty awesome, and you have a great. I appreciate the fact that you put large scans up there for everything.
Right.
So, yeah, well, except the illustration art, which is a little bit harder to scan, I imagine. But
Sometimes, yeah. I usually just photograph everything off my iPhone.
really,
Yeah.
well, then you've got a good iPhone. Uh, let's see. Uh, Bill or Jason, no, I'm probably not. I can't say no, but I'm not planning on doing a lot of traveling this spring. So yeah, I don't know. But either way, so this is a good piece. But then, okay, there was a question. I kind of already asked you for your origin story, but but Brian would like to know, what was your first piece of original art? Do you
Yep.
remember?
It was a
Do you
Ken
still have it?
Landgraf,
Oh yeah.
sketch. It was the first thing I was probably like 14, 15 when I picked it up. And I guess that theory of my collecting even happened back then. I was looking at his sketches. I saw something that was like, the black and white stuff was maybe like $2 or $3, and the color works were like $5 or $6. And I decided to go for something that was nicer, get a color example. But it was Ken Landgraf Hawkman color sketch. That was the very first thing I got. But
Cool.
very early, I transitioned from sketches to published artwork. I liked the sketches. I liked having that opportunity to meet Dave Cockrum or something like that, and have him draw something right in front of me. But I decided to go for published things, and then very quickly, like I said, I like the sequential stuff. I understand that's comic book storytelling, but very quickly I decided just to get that one single image that was just striking, and yeah, there very quickly, that's the way I focus my collecting.
Yeah, I wanted to see if I mean, there's a lot of collectors who just prefer to focus on published stuff, right? I mean, that's it makes a lot of sense, especially because they're more going to be more memorable images, and that's your bent. Then that's yeah, even Jason to
The
some
most
point.
important thing is what you enjoy. If you enjoy meeting the artist and commissioning them and having them do something for you personally, and that's what you enjoy, then that's what you do. There's no right way to do it. Everybody has their methods, and you just, as long as it's what you enjoy and you're buying for yourself and you're collecting for yourself, then that's all that matters.
Can't go wrong.
Yeah.
And Ken Landgraf, he's actually I've emailed with him a few times. He
Yeah.
actually exhibited in one of our last Comic Art Live shows on the site, and he's going to be exhibiting at the that IC3 show. That
Right.
is,
I saw that.
gosh, yeah, that's not even 2 weeks away now, right?
Yeah, it's
That's on
coming
the
very
15th.
quickly. Yep.
Um,
Yeah,
Ken's a good guy. He's still out there. He's still making really nice artwork, and
definitely. Yep.
yeah, I missed picking up a couple pieces from him when he was doing the virtual show with us. So
He used to do an art class in New York. So once, when I was, again, young teenager, I went to one of his classes, his drawing classes. So I quickly found out it wasn't quite for me. That I don't have the
did
talent.
Ken tell you that, or did you decide that
No,
on your own?
I decided on my own after one class. I was like, I know it's something you work on and you get better, but
Mm,
I felt like I was too far away to get involved at that point.
got it. Well,
But yeah,
that's unfortunate, but yeah, at least you gotta know what you're good at.
right. Yep.
Uh, and I'm actually drinking Coca-Cola tonight, everybody, not
Uh,
Zevia. Maureen doesn't let me drink Coke, but for whatever reason, she bought me one today, and this is the first one she's bought me in a year. So I'm it's like a celebration for me.
special occasion.
All right, well, let's see. Well, we're going over to a Thorne piece here for
Yeah.
this next one. So, uh, tell me about this one. Is this something that you picked up from him, or was it a different path to picking it up?
No, that was definitely from him.
Oh wow.
He had I think all but maybe two of his Red Sonja covers. The one I really wanted was the Marvel Feature 4. That was the first one I did pick up from him. I still own that. And this one, seeing it in person, was very striking as well. So I decided these would be the two pieces that I most wanted from him. But
Mhm.
yeah,
No, I mean, come on, this is yeah, I can picture the published cover. I mean, everything about this is like Rick Welch just said, damn. I mean, it's perfect. It
yeah.
really is so striking.
In the published version, they made the face more of a bear, which I think seeing this original made me more of a beast. I liked it more too. So
Oh heck yeah.
yeah.
And it's got all the original trade dress, I imagine, on it. I mean, come on, if it coming
Nope.
from no, really?
None of his covers had any stat work on them. They were all
Really?
just the artwork, which was unusual. So this was an overlay
You put an
that
overlay on it. Okay. I mean,
that I had.
it's in the scan, it looks toned, so it even looks, I mean, it clearly matches it well. I mean, usually when something's kind of done after the fact,
Yeah,
most people who would do that kind of work wouldn't go to that, degree to match it up.
yeah. Phil from Phantom Restoration.
Uh-huh.
He's local here in New York, but he's really good. He really focuses on color matching and making it look authentic, which I'm very happy with his work. And I think anybody who needs any stat work done, he's really the only one I really trust giving high end pieces to, and the quality of the stuff he does, and the time he spends color matching. Although it may be a little time till you get your piece back, but once you get it back, you'd be happy with it. Just spends a lot of time there.
Cool. Well, if you want to share his contact information with me, feel free because
Yeah,
I always get asked, a couple times a year about people wanting, certain restoration work, and I always just use the old standbys. But I always tell people, look around. There's usually somebody local who might not be, a comic art specialist, but can do the work for you because you'd be surprised. I mean, I've told people, why don't you just Google it, and you might find somebody in Wisconsin, and it turns out they're like, yeah, they were right in the next town over. But
right.
with so many collectors in the New York area who probably don't know who Brooklyn Phil is, I'd be happy to share it. Phantom
Yeah,
Restoration.
yeah.
I don't. I didn't. He didn't. I know who you're talking about too, Jason.
Exactly. There's
I didn't know he was Phantom Restoration though.
exactly. They Yep. Yep.
But no, I know who he is.
Sure.
But yeah, I didn't know it.
Yeah, most
Um,
whenever I need any stat work done, I have Phil do it. But there's always local people, and I've had other people do it. But the color matching is far superior to anybody else. So
right. No, that's awesome.
yeah.
Uh, another question from Brian. Do you know what happened to the Marvel feature number 2 original cover after the exhibit, the one with the red marker? And I'm not, so I have no idea what he's talking about. But you
I
might.
missed that. I missed it, but yeah, Brian and Gene Park were there at the retrospective,
Mhm.
and supposedly the Marvel Feature 2 cover came up, and somebody asked Frank to sign it. Um, and they busted out the big red Sharpie and signed it right across the artwork. But I don't know. I don't know who owns that cover. I don't know who that was who came in with it. I never heard anything about it again. So yeah, but they're always very excited to tell that story and what they saw and how shocked they were. And but yeah, a big signature right across. I don't know. I asked Frank about it too, and Frank was like, "I don't remember signing that." So maybe he wasn't paying attention to what he was signing. He was probably just excited and giddy about the show. But and I missed
Right.
it. If I would have seen it, I'd like to have known about that as well. But Yeah, that's what you
Yeah,
always when you,
that's like a Stan Lee signature right in the
yeah,
middle of Cap's shield or something, right? I mean, that's gosh, or John Byrne, he likes to sign inside the panels. I mean, he tries to
Stan's,
find an open spot, but he it's still they're almost always there.
yes, Stanley's done some big signatures across artwork. So yeah, you definitely have to be careful when you're going to get a celebrity or an artist to sign a piece. You get what you get.
Exactly. Wow.
You risk.
Boy, everybody talked to Phil at the show. Even Jeff says he was talking with Phil at Miller's one night. Everybody was meeting at Miller's at OAX. I'm
Yeah,
gonna have to spend some more time there myself. So we're gonna look at some illustration art for a couple slides here.
sounds good.
Switch over to this next one. So tell me a bit about this piece. I'm trying to remember who the artist was on it.
Yeah,
I'm trying to find
Gustav
this.
Doré.
Doré, that's right.
Yeah, Doré did the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, which is this is from. Um, he did worked with Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven. He did a great version of the Bible. So this is probably the oldest piece I own. I think it's from the 1880s, about 1880. Usually what Doré would do was he would do these drawings, and then he would have his assistant etch it onto a plate, and they would do the etchings from that. So it's very rare to find anything from Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, which is this from this I found years ago. There was a major I guess he was an investment guy, and he was arrested for embezzling or something, and his collection came out to auction, and this was one of the pieces he owned. So yeah, Gustav Doré is great. He definitely influenced on so many comic guys for sure. But this is the Death Ship, it's called. Yeah, the large piece, a very large piece, kind of like a poster-sized piece. But Doré was very prolific. But certain pieces like this are very hard to get. So
I would imagine we don't have many on Comic Art Fans.
not too many, but you do have a few. I think you do have one or two other originals. But yeah, it's not too many. But yeah.
Well, this is this is Delight Lozman says I have a Doré Bible.
Yeah.
Right. Well, he owned his own print shop and everything, so that's why there's so much work out there, and it was from the mid to late 1800s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike wanted to know how large was it again? You said this was pretty large piece.
It's about kind of like a 2-up comic book size, maybe a little larger.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but that piece has been on exhibit at a few shows, a few museums. But yeah.
Now I saw Rich Danny's wanted to ask about a piece, but we'll look at one more slide and then we can look at the piece he's talking about or asking about. So there we go.
This is Tengrin. Tengrin was an illustrator in overseas. This is one of the people Disney brought over to work on his movies. So he did all the works for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, so you may kind of see that influence on this piece. But yeah.
Now pieces like this, are you picking them up from exhibitions that you've had, or same with the Doré? I mean, how are you finding?
Yeah, this one probably came from a Swedish auction. But yeah. You can see definitely the influence on Disney. One of the biggest collectors of his stuff was Walt Disney. There's a museum that Walt has in California, I guess, but he had a large collection of Tengrin and Heinrich Klei stuff, which was like I said, so influential in the early Disney films.
Right. When I saw I didn't recognize his name when I was picking the pieces, and so I read just enough. I mean, I know he worked with Disney. He even did the Pokey Little Puppy cover or something like that.
Exactly, that's right.
He
did all those little
so
books.
prolific, as an artist and illustrator. That just shows he's versatile. And I mean, and he lived to like either the late 60s or early 70s or something. So
Yeah.
fairly
He was working all that time. Yep. But definitely all those little golden books you remember as a kid, Saggy Baggy Elephant, all that kind of stuff.
right. I mean, it's
Yeah.
yeah. Again, you think about all the books that you've read as a growing up, and you just never
Right.
know which creators actually had a hand in some of them and
Yeah.
how important they were.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Rich says he did some development on Pinocchio, possibly. Yeah.
Definitely. Yes, he did. Yep. A lot of
All
the
right.
backgrounds he painted. Yeah.
Okay. Now I wanted to try to find that one piece that Rich was asking about, the Clark piece. Let me see
Or the Harry
here.
Clark.
Yeah. Let me see if I can
Harry
figure it.
Clark is great. I've been looking for a Harry Clark for quite a while. It's his stuff is really rare. Um, yeah, he's one of my favorite illustrators. He, all the tells a mystery and imagination, Edgar Allan Poe, some incredible illustrations by Harry Clark. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the artist either, but so is this
this was Little Mermaid.
okay? A Little Mermaid from
Yeah,
1916. Okay, my
by
gosh.
Hans Christian Andersen. Yeah, no, that's a great piece. He worked very small. He died young. He was very involved in stained glass windows and with the lead poisoning um, cut his life short. But did a lot of very famous stained glass windows. But this is a small
Amazing.
piece, almost magazine size, so it's some incredible detail in there. But yeah.
Wow. And then Jason throws a question at you. What's the oldest piece of art you own?
Yeah, I
Do
think
you,
there was that Gustave Doré,
the Dory
Ray
piece?
Ryman, the Ancient Mariner that we just looked at. 18, like I said, 1880s. I think that's the oldest.
Well, there you go. The only other
Yeah, Rorschach's got a great
Clark in
one.
here. Yeah, Korshak has one as well. Okay, I was just
Yeah,
curious if was at least another on the site, and that makes sense.
yeah, that's his from Tells a Mystery and Imagination, Pit in the Pendulum.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great piece.
All right. Well, there you go. We've answered Jason's question too.
Yeah.
Um, all right, back to some comic art here. Let's take a look at this. So, a McFarlane Spidey cover. So, again, a guy, you're. I don't see Korshak collecting McFarlane Spider-Man covers. So, tell me how that works. I mean,
Well,
you're.
it's a problem to be so eclectic. You know, it's difficult. You're like, well, what should I get? I was bidding on Conan #1 cover at a Sotheby's auction, and it went too high for me. But I had been saving up for that piece, and I really wanted it. So afterward, the auction, I took the funds that I had, and I picked up the J. Allen St. John Weird Tales cover. So that's how eclectic my collecting is. That when the Conan one didn't work out, I went for a Weird Tales cover. But still, yeah, it's eclectic, and one of my favorite covers of all time is probably Spider-Man 15 cover by Ditko, and this
Mhm.
is very reminiscent of that. Where he's kind of tangled up in the ropes of the Craven in his net. So this reminded me a lot of that, and tangled up in the Venom. So this is one of my favorite covers that I had a chance to get by McFarlane.
Well, sometimes when the opportunity for the piece passes you by that you were really going after, then something else,
Yeah, exactly.
works out well for you. I
Yeah,
Structuring auctions is hard, right? Because it's like trying to figure out, what buyers are interested in and where things should fall. Um, but it's always good to have some really great pieces there at the, after other great pieces, because somebody's always going to be interested in picking something else up.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, this is one of my favorite McFarlane covers. I think my very favorite covers are probably tied up with Joe, who has some of the best pieces. But I was happy to have a chance to get this one. It kind of worked out the way it came out. It was actually auctioned for a second time. It went through Heritage first, and then the owner quickly decided to sell it to pick up an Action One. So just having that selling too quickly worked out in my favor.
Well, definitely. That's not many people can say they have a McSpidey cover. So
Yeah.
you got a good example. Very nicely done. Yeah, and it does have a super spiky thing in the top right corner. Yes, it does. Now again, just showing your diversity as a art collector.
Yeah.
Switch over to a Bisley uh, painted piece that's incredibly cool.
Yeah. I was very fond of this one I picked up from Scott Dunbier.
Hmm.
He's got his was it Take Three, or he's got his new publication company out now.
Yep.
Um,
Act 4,
Act,
yeah, or
Act,
something.
Act, Act Four, something like that. Yeah. So Scott's a great guy. This piece I picked up from him. He had all the covers at one time, and somebody else picked up all the rest of them, but this one. And maybe like a month after I picked it up, he came back to me and said, "I have somebody who wants to buy it, and he was willing to pay me maybe like 6 times what I just paid for it a month ago." But but being who I am and how much I like this piece, I was like, I couldn't sell it though. And later we found out that he was also uh, put in jail for embezzling or something like that. So all those covered. It wasn't not a good deal to make, but I was very happy that I held on to it, and
Oh
very happy
yeah.
cover. It's a
No,
fun
this
cover.
is like number one Marvel fan just said early 90s Biz is the best. I mean, these are
Yeah,
just it's
definitely.
it's clean. I mean, but it like, somebody else said, very gnarly, and it's true. I mean, this is what you love when you think of Bisley stuff. And yeah, but I mean, you look at it's just so well painted. I mean,
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
everybody has a period of time when they work when they're the best, but I like Bisley at this point. Yes, he was a little tighter on the figures and very painterly in the details. Later on, he got a little looser, which is a different style, which is not bad. It's just a changing of his styles. But I like this early kind of more painterly style to his figures.
Well, agreed.
Hmm.
So, um, they may have that good taste in art, Marcus. You never know. Um, looks Fourth corner says about Glenn Fabry. Yeah, I mean, maybe Fabry saw a little bit of Bisley and whatnot. You never know. Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I'm sure he was influenced by Bisley heavily,
yeah,
but
a lot of artists were. Yeah.
Simon was kind of unique, and he was coming out. He was the first one to really have this style and intensity. Yeah,
All right. Well, we're going to switch back into some illustration here. A couple pieces, and we've got a Winsor McCay. Now, this
yeah,
is not something we're used to seeing from Winsor McCay. Obviously, there's a lot of other things he's more famous for, but this, as an illustration, is just it's amazing. I mean, the all the lettering,
yeah.
and the perspective. I mean, it just makes the piece stand out as being something really unique for McKay. And even though a lot of those early strips were very wordy, I mean, this is very deliberate. I think it's just amazing.
Yeah, and it's a great piece of the times. It says advertising 1907, but the
Hmm.
New York subway system started in I think 1904, and this drawing is actually from 1904. So it's kind of like what it's going to look like, what the future is going to look like in a few years, how advertising is going to get out of control. So yeah, this was drawn maybe 2 or 3 months after the very first subway in Manhattan. So it's
So
yeah,
not only
out of
it's a
control
commentary on
advertising.
the times too.
Yeah, yeah.
Little did he know how right he was.
Exactly, going up to Times Square and see what it's like now. Yeah, advertising out of control.
Yep, 118 years old. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's pretty awesome. What's the size of a piece like this then?
that's maybe 18 by 24 or something like that.
Wow.
It's kind of a smaller, but yeah, as again as important as when McKay is with his sequential and animation work. I like again the standalone images. So I like the editorials like this personally more than some of the strips. But
I think it's great. It's on the, you've got it on the umbrella, and you're right. It's, what was it? Rich Danny says, "What's a wen?" I don't know what a wen is. It's it has something
Yeah, yeah,
to remove warts, wens,
yeah. Slang of
pimples,
the times.
and wrinkles. Yeah, I don't know what a wen is. That's a good question.
Yeah,
Um, but no, this it's beautiful. I mean, the character illustrations, throughout this whole piece are fantastic. I'd love to see this thing in person.
yeah. It's a fun piece.
And then one other piece of illustration with this set, Charles Adams. See, again, we're just bouncing all over the place,
Yeah,
Zaddick, but you know, you got all the people that, if you want to have a good example by, on the illustration side of things. I mean, I always look at Charles Adams. I'll never be able to buy one, but who doesn't? If you could get one, a Charles Adams would be something I think most comic art collectors would be really happy to own.
yeah. I was always a big fan of Charles Adams. I had all the first editions of his books
Hmm.
growing up. So I was just had a few pieces over the years. But when I had a chance to get this one, and it's a very important piece of his. I love the Adams Family pieces, but most of them are tied up in the Charles Adams Museum as well. So this was actually also shown to people to test their level of sanity by doctors. So it was shown to people like, do you find anything wrong with this drawing? And they would test people. So it was actually used that way.
Yeah, that's I don't know what to think about that. As the creator of a piece that they used your artwork to kind of test for
Yeah,
sanity. But I'm sure Charles was probably happy about that, right? I
I'm
mean,
sure. I'm sure he was. Yeah, yeah,
oh man, that is. But yeah, no, I mean, it's when you see it, I mean, immediately you just ask all kinds of questions, and
right.
in
Exactly.
part. In
Exactly.
part, you ask those same questions to the person who came up with the idea to create it. I mean, but when you think of Adam's work, um, he just he did things his own way, and his style is so unique. You can't mistake an Adams no matter what it was that he was painting. I mean, uh, but yeah, this is fantastic.
Yeah. No, I really like Charles Adams a lot. Yeah.
And I'm sorry I asked what a when was now in the chat, and I'm not going to highlight any of those comments. But either way, no, this is phenomenal. I mean, I can't say that we've showcased a Charles Adams piece from any of the collector interviews we've done, and I've done over 240 over the last 5 years. But so it's just great to see. I mean, and there is a fair amount of Charles Adams artwork on CAF for those of you who haven't
Yeah.
taken the time to search, which is just nice to see the crossover.
Definitely. Definitely. Charles Adams actually this was his most important piece, and he did two other copies of it. I think one was given to his girlfriend at the time. Um, I'm not sure exactly what the other one was from, but this was the one that was published and used in the New Yorker. But
Hmm.
other his two other copies have been out there. One is in a very prominent collection because at one point I owned one of the versions and sold it to a friend of mine.
Well, then you know where it is, Zaddick.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna switch over our back to some comic book artwork, and let me go ahead and put the link in the chat, and I'm gonna switch the slide here.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite illustrators in comics, Paulo Rivera, has been to OAX the last couple years, and we've had him on the shows a lot. But in particular, his Daredevil run was just incredible. And I used to own one of the interiors to this one, and I didn't sell it when I had this big construction project, but I sold it after that because somebody really wanted it, and I
Uh-huh.
regret it to this day
Right.
because the work that he was doing on Daredevil was just. I mean, I was so blown away because I liked his painterly work, right? Because but
Yeah.
this was like when he was really kind of exercising his inking muscle, and just the idea of just approaching things in a way that I had never seen him work before. And you've got arguably probably one of my favorite cover that he worked on from the run is this one.
Yeah. This is definitely influenced by Gustave Doré, the
Hmm.
one who did the Death Ship that we saw earlier. Even the way he signed this piece was similar to a Doré signature. Uh, But yeah, when this came up, I was not familiar with Paulo Rivera, but I saw this cover. I was like, that's crazy. So I had to pick it up. And actually, it went kind of high in auction, and I didn't win it.
Oh no.
Uh, but it went to a collector overseas. And later on, when I was doing the Frank Thorne retrospective, he was contacting me about some pieces that he was interested in, and I offered him a piece or two that were not in the show, that were there were examples he was very happy with. So we were able to work out a trade. So it's one of those times when I did work out a trade, but not from something from my personal collection, but something I was offering. And it worked out that this piece came back to me in that way. But
Well,
yeah,
I'm glad it did. I mean, his again, his work was just unbelievable. I've been trying to pick up a few pieces from the run ever since, and I've not found the right piece.
yeah,
But this one, this story was amazing. The art throughout it was amazing, and gosh, I mean, I'd love to see this thing in person. I'm just jealous. I think.
yeah, it's a crazy piece. There's a video I think on YouTube or something of that Paolo put up of him drawing it. So it's a fun video to see.
I'm making a note of that because I've watched a lot of his process stuff, and always used to do this like reference Wednesday thing, and he would show some of the photos and the
Yeah,
things that he would take from that. But I don't believe I've ever seen him working on this particular piece. So making a note so I can go back and
yeah,
find it.
it's a fun video to
Cool.
see. It's kind of, it's sped up into maybe 10 minutes, but it's interesting to see him.
Jason's saying I should go to your show and then I can see this stuff. Yeah, I get it, Jason.
Nudge, nudge.
Yeah, exactly. He's trying. Now, so the next piece is the one I think many people in the chat have been wanting to talk about,
Yeah.
and of course that is the Michael Golden.
Yep.
And tell us about how you acquired it, and just even estimate how many times people have asked you if this piece was available.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times, and it's always the same answer.
Yep.
But yeah, I think somebody earlier on asked what my favorite piece was, and I think this is my favorite piece. Like I said, I grew up on Golden. It was the first comic I got was Micronauts 1, so I liked his style, and this one was just, you see that when you see the publication, I think the background is all purple, so all the details lost, and it's just a crazily detailed work. But yeah, I was buying something from Mitch Itkowitz from GraphFix Collectibles, and I think he was working out of like a Action Comics uptown. And I went up there, I was picking something up from him, and he's like, "Yeah, you want to see something cool?" I was like, "Yeah, okay." So he went in the back room and pulled this out, and I was like, that's great." And and I was in the like kind of like the $200 threshold at that time of buying, and I was like, "So," he's like, "Yeah, this is Kevin Eastman's coming in tomorrow to see this, so I've got it here for him." And I was like, "Oh, so it's not for sale?" He's like, "No, I'll sell it." So I was like, "I know how much is it?" And like I said, it was 1,500. And then, like I said, at that time I was in a $200-300 threshold. But he worked with me on time payments. I think I brought back a Starling Splash, like a Warlock Splash or something that I picked up from him, and traded that in towards this, and saved up some money and picked it up from him. But yeah, this is, I think, my favorite piece. Yeah.
I don't blame you at all. And I mean that's funny. A lot of people probably don't know that Eastman was a big art collector
Yeah.
back in the day. I mean, I'm sure he still has a few pieces, but I mean, he used to own like all the covers to Crisis on Infinite Earths or something for a while. I mean, he had a pretty spectacular collection. But and then a lot of people don't know much about Mitch because but he's been around a long time. I mean, he's been. I mean, he was hanging out at the studio every now and again. I think I've seen a photograph or two of him, back in the day. So he's been around a lot, and a lot of artwork has passed through his hands. And those of you who have, well, you don't see him at San Diego anymore, but I mean, he had one of the nicest illustration setups of
Mhm.
anybody. at San Diego back in the day.
Yeah,
But
he had a good mix of illustration and comic. Mitch has been in, yeah, who's definitely involved in it for years. And whenever you see those catalogs of the Miller Daredevil covers for $400, those are Mitch's catalogs. But so
right.
that's something I regret, never picking up one of the Miller covers from him when I had a chance for $400. but
Yeah. Right, but
but
you were there when they were being offered. So
yeah,
so
what
you know,
what does that count for? But yeah, yeah. But
oh
Mitch had a
man.
lot of great stuff. Yeah, graphics
Yeah, he did.
collectibles.
Yeah, he's one of the guys I've asked to do interviews with like once a year now, just because I know he'll always turn me down. But the stories that guy could tell would just be fun. Just and I don't even want dirt. I just want, his time and he's a guy who recognized the value of the work and enjoyed it early
Yep,
on. I mean, as early as the mid 70s. And I think, without people like Mitch, marketing the work and making it more available, who knows, the hobby might not have caught on as early as it did, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
just that's really I think what it comes down to. So many of those art dealers from that era, like you said, AOK, I've
right.
never even heard of that one. So
Yeah,
and I forget the name of the brothers who rep the Busemas, and but I hear I've heard stories coming in since I started collecting in the late 90s. But there's a whole era of people who are selling art and dealing art, but Mitch lasted a lot longer than most of them.
yep. And Mitch had a gallery in Soho for a little bit where he was
Hmm.
selling comic artwork. Yeah,
I remember that. I mean, that was was that in the 2000s? I can't even remember when he had that. I know I never went to it.
yeah, yeah. Mitch was brutal sometimes, but I always had a easy time dealing with him. Um, yeah,
Right. He definitely didn't pull any punches when he was
no, and
talking to you about
very
it.
knowledgeable. Yeah, he definitely has a lot of stories about people that probably people don't want to hear about. People
Exactly.
that went out there, but yeah.
But again, looking at the artwork, it is behind you. You do pull it out so it's not, you don't actually have it framed on the wall. It's something that you kind of store in a flat file to keep it safe. I'm seeing the Corbin there too. Or do you have those out for just anybody to see when they go over your house?
No, usually, yeah, I don't have as much framed as I should.
Mm.
Um, but I end up saving the money for artwork, but I really do want to invest the time and money into getting proper framing. And if you are going to frame, you definitely want to UV plexi and acid free everything.
Hmm.
But it's an investment. So, but it's something that you should do at some point, and I regret not doing. It's picking a few pieces out that you really enjoy seeing and enjoying them more often.
Right, because oversized pieces like that, I mean, you would have to have a large flat file to store them properly
Yeah,
or something, and it just
yeah,
it's
definitely large flat file. You should do it. You shouldn't be putting them in a portfolio and standing up. But yeah, flat file. It's worth investing the
exactly.
money for that if you're not going to do anything else.
Well, this next artwork, again, another one that it's not a head scratcher because at least it's kind of in the same vein with the characters, but
Yep.
now we have a Lee X-Men cover. So, is this something? How long have you had this piece? Let's go
Yeah, I
there
guess
first.
I probably picked it up about a year after it came out.
Wow.
I picked that up directly from Jim Lee. Um, you know, Same kind of thing. I was at a show in New York. I was set up there selling stuff and just selling comics and stuff like that there, and I went over to see him and he had like a good 4-inch stack of artwork. And I went through the whole pile. I was kind of the first one there. And I pulled out 3 pieces. I pulled out this piece. I pulled out a splash that's on calf. It's kind of a space scene with some floating heads and a spaceship,
Hmm.
and maybe one other piece. I don't remember exactly what it was. And I was just deciding what to get. I think the splash was kind of in my budget, which was like $600, and this was 1,000. And I'm there trying to figure out. I was like, well, I should probably stay in my budget. I don't have enough money to even pick this up today. Um, and I'm thinking about it. I'm holding 3 pieces in my hand, and Albert comes over, and Albert goes through the whole pile, picks out like a stack that he's going to buy. And he's kind of waiting patiently and looking at me. He's like, so, you going to get those? Knowing I could only afford one, I decided to really just go to work and get the cover. Same kind of thing. Jim worked with me. I gave him a down payment and went to sell as much as I could throughout the show and made enough by the end of the day to pick it up from him. So I've had that pretty much about a year after it came out, and I picked it up directly from Jim.
That's incredible. And I would imagine Albert picked up the 2 pieces that you didn't buy.
Definitely, he scooped them right up. and I'm sure Albert's had repping him. I'm sure he's had quite a chance of some great pieces.
Oh, of course he has.
So I don't feel too bad for him.
No, not at all. But that's awesome that you actually got to pick this up direct from Jim.
Yeah, and that was a lot back then. 1,000 was a lot because at that time you could pick up a Kirby cover for less than that.
Right. No, that I've heard stories. See, I wasn't collecting at this point, but yeah, well, that's fantastic. I mean, you can't. Wow. Well, congrats. I like this cover a lot. I always did. But this is that's cool.
Yeah,
And yeah, well done, says Rick Welch. Let's see. Oh, okay. I didn't do everything straight like I probably should have, but here you go. We have a Jeff Jones painting. Now, what is this too? Because I think it's a cover to Creepy, isn't it?
Creepy, yeah, Creepy. I think 123 cover or something like that. But yeah, this is a nice large. It's on canvas. I think it's acrylic. I think it's acrylic on canvas. But yeah, I've always liked Jeff Jones and all the studio guys. The studio is actually on 25th Street. 25th Street. But nice macabre piece.
Is this one that you picked up from a collector in the aftermarket?
I picked it up from a collector off of CAF. I don't know if he had a poster on CAF or not. I don't remember if he did, but we were in communication. He has some nice studio stuff, and I was able to pick that up from him. But yeah, nice large piece. I kind of like dark and gothic-y, macabre stuff. So
yeah, it's fantastic. Well, it's cool. So CAF provided a lead to pick up the piece.
Yeah.
I mean, that's wonderful.
Definitely has. Yep. It's a great way to network with people and kind of put your wants out there sometimes, and something will come back to you. Not all the time, not what you want, but things come back.
So have you owned a few Jeff Jones pieces over the years?
A couple. I owned a nice piece that was used for a puzzle of a mummy. I don't think it's used anywhere else, but yeah, I sold that one to. It ended up going to George Lucas, but that was a nice piece. But I think I like this one a little bit. What bothered me about that other piece was he did this crackling style. He kind of aged it. I think he probably baked it for a bit to give some crackling in the painting, which bothered me a little bit. So that's why I let that one go. I was happy to get this one.
But it ended up with Lucas, so we might see it at the Lucas Museum one day,
yeah,
right?
Probably will. Yeah.
Is that something you're gonna make a trip for to once it's so open?
At some point. At some point, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of us are looking forward to just seeing the museum and seeing what kind of exhibits they have there. I think it's unfortunate it's on the other coast.
Yeah,
but,
I think a lot of comic collectors will be surprised with the stuff that he has and how diverse it may be. But yeah.
No, I mean, you figure he was part owner in oh gosh, what's the name of that comic shop back in the day in New York? Remind me, Zaddick.
I forget the name, but yeah.
Okay.
And he was a collector himself. He collected kind of like more strip stuff and the classics, but
Super Snipe.
open.
Thank you, Marcus. There you go.
Yeah, Super Snipe.
And yes, I will go to the Lucas Museum. But yeah, no, I mean that's the thing. That's the cool thing about him. I mean, he was a fan early on, and Super Snipe was. I think they had the first comic art kind of gallery as like it was like the shop next to them. They took over and had a gallery space in there. So that was even before the New York Comic Art Gallery was in place, and they I think they had like I think a Neil Adams exhibit with his Tarzan paintings. I mean, just even though it's just early on and it probably didn't get the press or the recognition that it deserved, but again, it's back to those early people who were taking the putting the time in, and Lucas was involved with it,
Yeah.
surprisingly.
Yep. Super Snipe was a little before my time, but yeah.
All right, here's a character that everybody knows I have a fondness for. So a Kirby Thor cover of any kind would be pretty awesome. But this Tales of Asgard cover is just so damn. I mean, there aren't really any covers from the Thor run that have that are this impressive. I mean, there's a lot of great ones, obviously, but this is
Yeah.
just it's got so many characters on it. It's got Thor flying right at you. Uh, it's got the Rainbow Bridge, and I don't know. I mean, what more could you ask for in a piece from Kirby that's Thor related than this cover right here?
Yeah, no, it's a fun piece. This one was one of those pieces I picked up very early on, and it was $800. And it sat there for a while. It wasn't like it came out and I picked it up. It sat there for like a show or two, and I was like, I should get that piece. That's a good example. So I finally picked it up. But yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy. $800. Rich Danny says, "Ouch."
yeah, I know, I
Or
know.
insane. Yeah, and maybe but a piece like that, I could see it sitting if somebody was a fan of Kirby's, they might want something from Journey to Mystery or
Something
the
two up. Yeah, yeah. Back then, again, it was like a good 30 years ago, 35 years ago. So back then, yeah, you want to get a two up. This was a regular size comic page, but yeah, I thought it was a strong example. I should just go for it. So
oh heck yeah.
it's a
No,
fun
I
piece.
mean I'm jealous. I mean, I think it's amazing, and you're right that is um it's not it's something that you don't I don't think too much about because I haven't been too much into the twice up pieces and collecting pieces from that era, but
Yeah,
I know that a lot of the collectors, clearly they value them more because of the size and the era that they come from, but yeah, I know a few collectors who would always prefer to get something twice up than from if it's a Kirby or anything from this kind of time period.
yeah. It's just more striking. It's just more striking. It's just to have something even larger and more monumental is definitely. I always wanted something from Fantastic Four or X-Men, but this is the one that worked out for me at the time.
No, that's perfect. And yeah, I see I do see Loki on the bridge as well, Rich. Yeah, he's there. Uh Brian, he says, I hope some of my purchases today will turn out as good as this one in 35
Yeah,
years.
I know.
Yeah, you just never know. You just
It,
never
it's
know.
as long as you're happy with it, that's all. Yeah,
Right. No, I think this is fantastic. I mean, yeah, this would be the Kirby. If I had this in my collection, I'd be done with Kirby artwork. I'd be like, I don't need anything else.
right.
Now here's a cool one. I remember, I mean, it was gosh, I remember when I saw you at New York Comic Con. It was probably, gosh, it feels like it was 10 years ago. But I
I
remember you
know.
showing me an
Likewise.
EC cover. It was the only piece I remember you showing me that you were like, hey, you got to see this one. I don't remember if it was this one or not though. But uh, I mean, again, it's back to and I see stuff like that, and it always surprises me because I knew a little bit about the things that you like to collect, and then but you had to add an EC cover to the collection as well. So I would assume always was something that you'd like to get, and those are really hard to come by.
Yeah, I think I was first turned on to the EC stuff when the Gladstone reprints were coming out,
Hmm.
um, and I was just impressed by the artwork in them. Especially the covers, and I think they had a great staff of artists, and I think every one of them who was working at that time was working at their best. Davis and Wood and Graham Ingalls and everybody who was working. I think they were all at the top of their game, I think. So it's just some incredible work from all of them. Johnny Craig, everybody, Feldstein. And the Davis here has some great effects. The foam coming out of his mouth, that is all razor work, where he would chip away and cut the paper. So it's a lot of very cool effects that you only really see off the original.
Right, I didn't even notice that, but I see what you're talking about there. I mean, Ramita Senior used to do a lot of that kind of, for effect. But
Yeah,
you don't think about the guys back then doing the same thing, right? I mean, it was just a means to an end to get an effect that they wanted. They didn't mind that they would nick up the paper, and at
yeah,
the end of the day, that's some of the most special stuff that you get to see as an art collector, is seeing the techniques that were used to just achieve those effects. So that's
exactly. How they got to that effect back then when they didn't know Zipatone or anything like that. So it's just really razor work and pen work and brush work. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy with this one too. That's awesome. And yeah. So with this one though, curious, did you do an overlay with the logo, or is that?
Those are all original.
Wow.
The top head is hand drawn, which is
Okay.
unusual.
Oh wow. Shoot.
Yeah.
That makes it even more special then.
Yeah. But yeah, those
Dang.
are all the original stats.
Well, congrats. You don't need another one now.
Yeah,
Those are
I
that's
was very happy with
amazing.
that one. Yeah. I
Um,
enjoy looking at it as you're showing them here. I enjoy looking at them. I'm kind of here admiring it as well.
well, that's what, CAF's all about, right? I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people told me that, over the years that they use their CAF gallery as a way to look at their collections, because
And
once they
yeah,
put them in a
and
portfolio or a flat file, you never go back, right? I mean, okay, they never say never, but it was the easiest way for you to like look at your collection, was just to go to the website. So you didn't have to dig it out or carry it around or whatever. So that's
no, it's
cool.
beneficial that way, just to kind of, and you can judge things. You're like, oh, what do I have in the way of that, and how does that compare, and what's coming up now? So it's a nice way to see everything in a very quick fashion. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, that's why when we made the app, I made it so that there was an easy button immediately once you got into it to go right over to your gallery, because that was the one thing, I always see people in, it shows they'd be like trying to open up their CAF on their phone, and they
Right.
couldn't figure out how to
Right.
browse their CAF or whatever. And so I was like, the one thing the app has to do well is get you into your gallery really quickly.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's a
but
lot of benefits to it.
yeah, surprise. We're learning after 22 years, but
Yeah. Wow.
couple illustration pieces here, and let's switch over to this one. So this is a Alan St. John piece,
Yep.
and I think anybody who collects science fiction, fantasy, illustration artwork wants to have a piece by him in their collection, right? I mean, it's just especially a color piece, and this is just fantastic. I mean, I can't even imagine having something like this in my home, being able to own a piece like this by him. I'm just I'm speechless, because I've always admired his work, and it's some as a creator, he's influenced generations of artists that went after him, and it's owning something by him, I think, is just really, really special. So I'm just, how did you get this piece?
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's really the father of science fiction illustration. Yeah, like I said, this was the piece I was talking about when I missed out on the Conan #1 cover, and so
Ah,
this is where I took my money, and then I picked this up from Illustration House. This is a Weird Tales cover. It's oil and canvas, probably about 2 feet by 2 feet. But yeah, a lot of great movement in this piece. Yeah,
no, it's
fun.
beautiful. Yeah. Rich Danny says it was a cover to one of Russ Cochran's auction catalogs.
It was also in the cover of his auction catalog. Yep, that's true. Yeah.
That's great. I don't think I ever got. I only have Cochran's like older auction catalogs. Those like the first, the ones that were more like a comic almost. I've got like the first
Okay.
40 of
Yeah.
those,
Yeah.
but I don't think I saw this one before. But either way, I mean, I love it. I mean, not many collectors, if you can just get to have one, I mean, that's enough. And you've got, I mean,
Right.
just based on the size of this one alone, I mean, I think that's spectacular.
Yeah, and it's so much that I think they say maybe 90%, if not more, of all the pulp covers were destroyed.
Right.
So just in general, pulp covers are pretty rare, let alone a strong example.
Yeah, I'm putting the link in the chat. I've been trying to keep up with sharing the links to the individual pieces for anybody. And everybody should know this is a great opportunity to leave a comment on any of Zaddick's artworks to let him know how much you appreciate his collection. Uh, that's always a fun part. At least give him some thumbs up. That would be a good thing. So we got two more pieces to look at this evening, and let's see. This next one is our last illustration piece of the night, and it's from Heinrich Clay. I'm not
Yep.
familiar with the artist, but that tell me what about them and why this piece spoke to you.
Yeah, again, he's one of the two major people that Disney brought over from Europe.
Okay.
So Clyde did all the work on Fantasia. It was mostly based on his drawings. And again, Disney was a big admirer of him and very influential on a lot of the Disney films. So him and Tengrin were two major influences on the early style of Disney. And this is the Ice Waltz, um, one of his more important pieces, but also Clyde would recreate his pieces. So it's not the only version. It's not also the original version. The original one was black and white, and it's in a museum. But this is one of the copies he made. But yeah, definitely Fantasia, Ice Waltz, Disney inspired piece.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not know the. Can you name a good book about early Disney artists and and influential people and within Disney's kind of sphere of creators that he worked with? Is there anything out like that out there? I mean, there's got to be, right?
I don't know if there's I don't know. There must be. I'm not really aware, but definitely Tengrin and Cly and even like Duloc was another one,
Okay.
but definitely Tengrin and Cly were the most influential. And the ones people said, they were brought over clippings and everything from Europe, and they're like, this is the style I want you guys to use, and the animators followed these styles
Hmm.
in their early films. So
Well,
yeah,
very nice. Now the last piece.
all right,
I had to put that at the end because it's of course my one of my favorite comics, of course, is X-Men, and one of my
yeah,
favorite artists from the X-Men is Dave Cockrum. So tell me how you got this one, and I imagine this would be a piece that a lot of people would be very would love to own, but yeah, you're the only one.
yeah, I know. This is the cover to Foom 10, which a lot of people say was the very first appearance of the new X-Men, but I disagree with that. I think it's maybe the second or third appearance date wise. But yeah, great image of the X-Men. This is one I picked it up from Mitch from his catalogs. I think it was like, maybe in my threshold at the time, 200, 250, I think. But but yeah, great piece. I'm a big fan of X-Men as well. Um, I think X-Men's my favorite and Fantastic Four would be my second favorite. But so yeah, when I had the opportunity to get this, I think Cockrum's great too. Byrne and Cockrum were definitely so influential on the X-Men, but yeah, I was very happy to have the chance to get this one and covet it since.
Oh, to be collecting at that point in time. Yeah, no, this is amazing. I mean, Dave's always been one of my favorite comic book artists,
Yeah,
and
and real nice guy too. Dave was a very nice guy.
he was. I did get to meet him a couple of times at shows. I think
Yeah,
maybe saw him at Heroes once, and I did see him at a New York show once. So Yeah, I mean, very unfortunate that he passed away far too soon. I mean, for a guy as creative as him, I mean, I would have loved to have seen him work into his golden years. I mean, and certainly he deserved it. His contributions to comics, character design, in both DC and Marvel. I mean, I think the idea that his costumes and stuff still like hold up to this day in comics just tells you a lot about how creative the guy was. And um, yeah, no, I'm again, he'll always be he's always going to be one of my top five favorite artists, no matter who else might come along after him.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. I love those big boots he's got on them. Those the
Right.
70s boot, those flares there. It's great.
Yep. So true. Uh, yeah. Anyway, I love it a lot. I'm glad you see, and it's pieces like this. You get them into your collection. You got it from Mitch from one of his catalogs, and it's still
Yeah.
there today. And not a lot of collectors can say that. That they've been able to hold on to something for that length of time. Yeah, that's that special.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm,
yeah,
I'm a pain in the ass. I don't like to sell anything. So when people are like, "Oh, how much would it take?" I was like, "It wouldn't matter." I'm sorry.
right. It's irreplaceable.
It is. It really is.
Well,
But yeah,
that's great. Yeah. And apparently Jason got to see it.
he
So,
did. Yeah.
he said you threw it down on the table. So it's more reason why at some point I need to get up to your show in, in New York so I can see some of this artwork too.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, Zaddick, man, this was, this is long overdue. I mean, we've known each other a long time. You've always had a collection that I think drives a whole lot of traffic for CAF because again, all the pieces. I mean, the Cochran piece, I have the page open on CAF right now. It's almost up to 8,000 views. It's been on the
Okay.
site a long time. That's pretty good. I don't have many pieces over 1,000 that have been on the site for 20 years. So
Yeah.
to
I know.
see that anybody who crosses like the 5,000 number of views on a piece is pretty special. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for again, number one, I really appreciate the fact that you share your collection on CAF because a lot of collectors don't. I mean, I think 10% of the collectors out there share their stuff on CAF. So it's always great when a collector that has pieces like yours, is willing to show them off and share them. And yeah, it's what makes CAF, relevant and important to people because they get to see works like this.
No, I think it's important to be able to share it and not just keep it locked up in your flat file and you're the only one to get to see it, enjoy it. So yeah.
There you go. And Fish has dropped in just at the last second to say hi to everybody and Zaddick. Nice to see you, Fish. Um, but yeah, no, that's awesome. I do appreciate it, and we should remind everybody about your show because it's still a little ways away, but not that far. I only have to slide back up here. It's Sunday, so it's a 1-day show, May the 4th. Easy day to remember, and Midtown Hotel, 6th Avenue, New York City. And who else you don't do the show solo, right? I mean, you're not the only showrunner, or are you?
I primarily do it. Yeah. I have
Okay.
a lot of people who help me out. But yeah.
You got to have some people to help out. I don't know. I wasn't sure if you had any assistance from any of the other people in town,
Well, I
but
make the kids work and my wife helps my job. They kind of have no choice, but yeah.
yeah, no. Well, that's what I did with mine. I mean, they're
Yeah,
there. They have to help out.
exactly.
Right. They got to pitch in. But yeah, so for anybody in the great Northeast, I mean, you should make your way over to the show. It's different than a lot of the other shows out there, but similar in flavor to OEX. You got artists, you
Yeah,
got
definitely.
dealers and reps, and a lot of collectors go to it. And I would encourage anybody who's able to get to the show, you should go and make sure you bring a portfolio. Do you provide any like the high top tables like we had at OEX where people can just kind of hang out, or does the hotel have spaces available where people can kind of congregate and chat?
Yeah, no, I definitely made some seating areas. I put a lot of extra seating out where people can just kind of sit and hang out and take a break, show each other their stuff, go through portfolios. I think that's important to have.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody likes a place to sit down and
Yeah,
push some art across the table or share portfolios and everything. Fish and Jason will be there, of course.
that's great.
Uh, yeah,
And
that's
I look forward to seeing everybody. And yeah, let everybody know about it, I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, and again, since you don't have a website, how do people purchase tickets in advance of the show?
I just do everything at the door right now. I'm not
Okay.
doing any advanced tickets. Just do cash at the door entry. I am going to have an early bird entry for some of those people who are always trying to sneak in. This way, they can pay an extra fee and get in an hour early. But
Okay.
yeah, another thing I want to topic a little bit
Sure.
is restoration.
Okay.
I think it's something that a lot of collectors are afraid of and frown upon. But if you have a piece that has tape on it and has a coffee stain on it, it's just going to eat away at the paper and become more of a problem. If
Mhm.
if museums can do restoration on the Mona Lisa, I think it's all right to get that coffee stain removed out of your cover or that scotch tape, because it just these issues become worse. They just embed themselves in the paper and everything. I was thinking about trying to pull out a piece that I've done restoration on of my own, but I just want to, let people know it's something that they shouldn't be afraid of, and they should.
Right.
Paper restoration is more expensive than oil and painting restoration, but it's definitely worth it. If you have mold on the piece or scotch tape or, like I said, coffee stains, all these things, traditional
Right. Well, the
problems,
older papers have a high uh, acid content to them, and
acidity,
so that and that can be fixed. You can deacidify those
exactly.
pages so that they'll last much longer than if you didn't. And I know that's like something you're right. This is a whole area that we could devote a couple shows to. We've talked a bit about it. Jeff Wedding, who was the guy who says he's not there's no Star Wars fans out there. He's I wouldn't call him a conservator, but he handles he works for the state of Nevada in their, and he basically archiving paper materials and all that kind of stuff. So he's very knowledgeable, and we had
Okay.
him on
Yeah.
for kind of a CAFU show where we're trying to give people some advice on how to handle and store artwork. But it is kind of uh, tragic to think about how much artwork out there might not be with us in 100 years if it's not stored properly because of the inherent risk with
Yeah. Well,
the acid in the paper.
those stains just get worse. Rubber cement. I
Mhm.
mean, rubber cement is terrible. But it's this you get it done, it's reversible. And like I said, a lot of people just kind of frown upon that. Like, as it's been restored, it's been cleaned. You don't know how many pieces have been cleaned that you're buying already. So
Oh,
it's definitely
that's
something.
true.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you should not be afraid of. And but to find out somebody who's good at it, there's lots of people who over restore pieces, to
Mhm.
bleach pieces too far, who push things too far, and then have to redo inking. But a good conservationist won't do that. They'll keep everything, they'll preserve everything, but the stains and the residue, which are going to cause more damage. But like you're saying, you can contact any museum or and find out who's a good restorationist, uh, who has a certificate in restoration, and
Mhm.
get it done. Don't be
Yeah,
afraid. I wanted to bring that up earlier, and I thought trying to bring a piece that we could talk about it with, but I think it's something that I wanted to
people
point
should at
out.
least explore it. Right. I know that that woman Lauren who works with Stephen Korshak,
Mhm.
does some restoration work, and yeah, I mean they're out there. But you're
It's
absolutely right. I
really
mean, I got a piece recently that I couldn't tell had a little bit of water damage to it, and it was so and the page is discolored. It's probably needs to be deacidified and flattened. At the end of the
Yep.
day, now that but I didn't know when I bought it. It
Preserve it.
looked the
Yeah.
scan looked fine, and it had a piece of tape on it with a piece of hair on it. I mean, gosh, I'm thinking about this piece now. I should know if I would have. I bought it sight unseen, right? I saw a
Right.
scan, and I should have seen it in person before I got it. But yeah, I mean, I even tried. I'm like, yeah, you see something like that, it gets you a little frustrated. Um, but you're right. People shouldn't be frightened of getting things
No,
cleaned up. If I do something with that one, I'll make sure I get a before and after of that
exactly.
one.
Exactly. No, it's something that's good to do and look into. But yeah.
Yeah. It was not a Berkey scan, Jason. So no, no. But anyway, good point there, and that's something, yeah, we don't talk about enough on the channel too. But we definitely need to devote a little bit of time to that to give people some insights into taking care of their artwork.
Yeah.
Because well, anyway, so Zaddick, if there's anything else you need, I mean, you've got ads on the site promoting the show, and it's May the 4th, and we've got, and
Yeah.
gosh, it's 2 months away exactly. I didn't realize
I know.
it's three,
Yeah.
4. All right, so yeah, anybody has any questions, hit you up through your calf.
Definitely.
Subscribe to that Instagram link that I put in the chat earlier, and again, they can reach out to you with any questions on how to attend, exhibit, all that good stuff.
Definitely. I appreciate it, and I enjoyed doing this with you.
Yeah, that's right. And we didn't get to look at the Corbin, but we got to look at the Corbin
Right.
all night long, and it's spectacular. Corbin's one of my all-time favorite artists,
Same.
and I can't, I don't think I've ever seen a painting of that quality, before. I've seen a lot of his pen and ink work, seen a few like minor like prelim kind of pieces, but I've never seen a fully finished piece like that. So congratulations on having
Yeah,
that.
he's definitely one of my favorite artists too. I grew up a lot of that underground stuff he did, so I enjoy
Right.
stuff with it immensely. Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Zaddick. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out in the chat with us as well. We appreciate it. Don't forget about the GraphFix Con, May the 4th in New York City. And I can't say I'll be there, but I know a lot of you will be there.
So
All
look
right.
forward to it.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.